Have you ever met a woman who seemed to radiate a different kind of energy? Someone whose presence alone made you feel calmer, more inspired, more alive? Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant minds in psychology, believed that certain individuals operate on a higher frequency of consciousness. And today, we're diving deep into the 4 rare signs that distinguish high-vibrational women from everyone else. But here's what makes this fascinating. These aren't the signs you'd expect. They're not about being perfect, constantly positive, or floating through life without problems. In fact, what Jung discovered might completely change how you understand feminine energy and consciousness itself. By the end of this video, you'll understand why these women seem to navigate life differently, how they've mastered something most people never even discover, and most importantly, the exact practices you can implement to elevate your own vibrational frequency. Stick with me, because the 4th sign is something that only 2% of women ever develop, and it might be the most powerful trait of all. Before we begin, if you're interested in psychology, personal development, and understanding the deeper aspects of human consciousness, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We dive deep into Jungian psychology every week, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming. Now, let's journey into the realm of high vibrational consciousness. Chapter 1. Understanding Vibrational Frequency. Section 1.1. What Jung really meant. Before we explore these 4 rare signs, we need to understand what Carl Jung actually meant by consciousness and energy. And I need to be honest with you, this isn't about crystals or pseudoscience. Jung was a trained psychiatrist and psychoanalyst who worked alongside Sigmund Freud. His theories are rooted in decades of clinical observation and deep psychological research. Jung believed that human consciousness exists on a spectrum. At the lower end, we have what he called unconscious, living, where people react to life rather than create it. They're driven by unexamined impulses, societal conditioning, and the shadow aspects of their personality they refuse to acknowledge. At the higher end, we have what Jung termed individuation, the process of becoming your authentic self by integrating all aspects of your psyche, both light and shadow. This is where high vibrational energy originates. Section 1.2. The Science Behind the Energy. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Modern neuroscience has actually begun to validate what Jung intuited almost a century ago. Studies on heart rate variability, brainwave patterns, and even electromagnetic fields produced by the human body show that our emotional and mental states do create measurable energy signatures. Research from the HeartMath Institute has demonstrated that when people experience elevated emotions like compassion, gratitude, and inner peace, their heart produces a coherent electromagnetic field that can actually be detected several feet away from their body. Other people can literally feel this energy, even if they can't explain it. This is why you've probably had the experience of meeting someone who just felt different, someone whose presence was calming or energizing. That's not mystical, that's measurable. Section 1.3. Why this matters for women specifically. Jung devoted significant attention to what he called the anima and animus, the feminine and masculine aspects that exist within all of us, regardless of our biological sex. But he also recognized that women, in general, have different psychological developmental patterns than men. Women's consciousness, according to Jung, is often more naturally attuned to the intuitive, the emotional, and the relational dimensions of existence. This isn't about biological determinism, it's about recognizing different paths to the same destination. Psychological wholeness. High vibrational. Women have learned to harness these natural inclinations while also integrating what Jung called their animus, their inner masculine qualities of logic, assertion, and independence. They've achieved a kind of psychological alchemy that most people never accomplish. Engagement prompt. Before we move into the first sign, take a moment and think. Have you ever met a woman who embodied this kind of integrated energy? Drop a comment below describing what made her different. I read every single comment, and I'm genuinely curious about your experiences. Chapter 2. First Rare SIGN. Comfortable with Paradox. Section 2.1. The definition. The first rare sign of a high-vibrational woman is something that sounds simple but is actually revolutionary. She is completely comfortable with paradox. Most people live their entire lives seeking certainty and consistency. They want clear answers. Is this person good or bad? Is this decision right or wrong? Should I follow my heart or my head? But high-vibrational women have transcended this binary thinking. They understand what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold two opposing ideas in the mind simultaneously and recognize that both can be true. Section 2.2. How this manifests. Let me give you some concrete examples of how this appears in real life. Example 1. Strength and vulnerability. A high-vibrational woman can be incredibly strong and resilient while also allowing herself to be vulnerable and ask for help. Most people see these as contradictory. You're either tough or you're soft. But she understands that true strength includes the courage to be vulnerable. She doesn't perform strength. She embodies it by being authentic. Example 2. Independence and connection. She is completely whole and independent on her own, yet she also deeply values meaningful connection with others. She doesn't need relationships to complete her, but she chooses them to enhance her life. This is a critical distinction that most people never grasp. Example 3. Confidence and humility. She is confident in her worth and abilities, yet she remains humble and open to learning. She doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, which paradoxically makes her more receptive to feedback and growth. Section 2.3. The Jungian Psychology. Jung spent years studying what he called the union of opposites. He believed that psychological maturity required the integration of opposing forces within the psyche, what he termed the coniunctio oppositorum. In his work with patients, Jung noticed that those who achieved the highest levels of consciousness were able to embrace contradiction without discomfort. They could be serious and playful, spiritual and practical, emotional and rational, nurturing and fierce. This is the psychological equivalent of what physicists call quantum superposition, existing in multiple states simultaneously until observation collapses the wave function. High-vibrational women have learned to live in this superposition consciously. Section 2.4. Why most people struggle with this. So why is this ability so rare? Because our entire social conditioning is designed to eliminate paradox and ambiguity. From childhood, we're taught to categorize everything: good or bad, smart or dumb, pretty or ugly, masculine or feminine. Our education system rewards single correct answers. Social media forces us to like or dislike with no middle ground. Marketing tells us we need to be consistent with our brand. This conditioning creates what Jung called the persona, a social mask that presents a consistent, predictable identity to the world. But the persona is a prison. It cuts us off from the fullness of who we actually are. High-vibrational women have done the psychological work to dismantle this persona and live from their authentic, multifaceted self. They've stopped trying to be consistent and started trying to be real. Checkpoint engagement. If you're still with me, great job, we're diving deep here. Hit that like button if this is resonating with you. And let's continue to the second rare sign, which involves something even more challenging, the shadow. Chapter 3, Second Rare SIGN Integrated Shadow. Section 3.1, Understanding the Shadow. The second rare sign is perhaps Jung's most famous contribution to psychology, the integrated shadow. Now most people have heard of shadow work, but very few understand what it actually means or why it's so transformative. Let me break this down clearly. Jung discovered that every human being has a shadow, the parts of ourselves that we've repressed, denied, or hidden because they're socially unacceptable, painful, or threatening to our self-image. This includes our anger, jealousy, selfishness, sexual desires, aggressive impulses, and anything else we've been taught is bad. Here's the crucial insight. These shadow aspects don't disappear when we repress them. Instead, they leak out in unconscious ways: projection onto others, passive aggression, self-sabotage, physical illness, and destructive patterns we can't seem to break. Section 3.2, What shadow integration looks like. A high-vibrational woman has done the brave work of facing her shadow directly. She's looked at her capacity for cruelty, manipulation, selfishness, and destruction, and she's integrated these aspects rather than rejecting them. Important distinction here. Integration doesn't mean acting out these impulses. It means acknowledging them, understanding their origin, and consciously choosing how to channel that energy. Real-life example. Let's say a woman notices she feels intensely jealous when her friend gets promoted. The unconscious response is to either deny the jealousy, "I'm so happy for her," while subtly undermining the friend, or to feel guilty and bad about herself for having the feeling. A woman with an integrated shadow does something different. She acknowledges, "I'm feeling jealous right now, and that's information about something I want for myself." She doesn't judge the feeling or project it onto her friend by deciding her friend doesn't deserve the promotion. She uses the jealousy as a compass, pointing toward her own desires, and then takes constructive action toward her goals. Section 3.3, The Paradox of Light and Dark. Here's where this connects to the first sign about paradox. High-vibrational women understand that they contain both light and darkness, and they're not in a war with themselves. Jung said something profound. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Most people on a spiritual or personal development journey make a critical error. They try to eliminate their darkness and become purely light. They want to be endlessly positive, loving, compassionate, and peaceful. But this creates what Jung called the inflated persona, a false spiritual self that's just as disconnected from reality as an ality, as an unconscious life. High-vibrational women know that their power, passion, boundaries, and self-protection come from the same source as their so-called negative emotions. Anger teaches us about boundaries. Jealousy points us toward our desires. Sadness deepens our empathy. Fear protects us from danger. Section 3.4, How to Recognize Shadow Integration. So how can you tell if a woman has integrated her shadow? Look for these specific behaviors. Sign 1. She doesn't project. When she's upset with someone, she examines her own contribution to the situation first. She doesn't blame others for her feelings. Sign 2. She has healthy aggression. She can say no clearly without guilt. She can assert her needs without apologizing. She can compete without making it personal. Sign 3. She's not threatened by other women's darkness. When other women display jealousy, anger, or competition, she doesn't judge them or feel superior. She recognizes these aspects in herself and can hold space for others. Full humanity. Sign 4. She has integrated her sexuality. She's neither repressed nor compulsively driven by sexual energy. She's comfortable with desire her own and others, without shame or domination. Sign 5, she can acknowledge when she's wrong. Because she's not defending a perfect self-image, she can admit mistakes, apologize genuinely, and change her behavior without her ego collapsing. This integration is rare because it requires tremendous courage to look at the parts of yourself you've spent your whole life hiding. But it's also the foundation of authentic power. Story time, personal anecdote for connection. I once worked with a woman, let's call her Sarah, who appeared to have everything together. Successful career, beautiful family, always positive on social media. But in private, she was struggling with panic attacks and a pattern of sabotaging her own success right before major breakthroughs. Through therapy, she discovered that she'd suppressed a tremendous amount of rage from her childhood, rage at parents who demanded perfection, rage at a system that rewarded compliance. She'd learned that anger was unacceptable, especially for girls. So she buried it. But that rage didn't disappear. It manifested as self-sabotage, destroying her success before anyone else could take it away. Once she acknowledged and integrated this shadow aspect, everything changed. She could access healthy boundaries, assertiveness, and protective anger when needed. The panic attacks stopped. Her success stabilized. That's the power of shadow integration. Chapter 4. Third Rare SIGN Relationship with Solitude. Section 4.1. Beyond Loneliness. The third rare sign of a high-vibrational woman is her relationship with solitude. And I need to distinguish this immediately from loneliness, because most people confuse the two. Loneliness is the painful feeling of being disconnected from others when you crave connection. Solitude is the intentional, nourishing practice of being alone with yourself and not just tolerating it, but genuinely enjoying it. Jung believed that the journey toward individuation, toward becoming your whole, authentic self requires periods of solitude. Not as an escape from life, but as a descent into the deeper layers of consciousness that can only be accessed when the noise of the external world fades away. Section 4.2. The Sacred Alone Time. High-vibrational women have cultivated what I call a sanctuary within. They don't need constant external stimulation, validation, or companionship to feel complete. They've developed a rich inner world that's endlessly fascinating to them. This manifests in several ways. Practice 1. Regular digital detoxes. She intentionally unplugs from technology and social media, not as a punishment, but as a gift to herself. She knows that constant connectivity fragments consciousness and prevents the deeper integration that happens in silence. Practice 2. Morning or evening rituals. She has a daily practice, maybe meditation, journaling, yoga, or simply sitting with her coffee in silence, where she reconnects with herself before engaging with the world. Practice 3. Solo adventures. She regularly does things alone that most people would only do with others. Solo dinners, solo travel, solo concerts. Not because she doesn't have people to go with, but because she values the different quality of experience that comes from being fully present with herself. Section 4.3. Why this is so rare. So why is this relationship with solitude so uncommon, especially among women? Women are socialized from birth to be relational beings. Girls are praised for being helpful, accommodating, and attuned to others' needs. While these capacities are valuable, they often come at the expense of developing a strong sense of autonomous self. Many women have never been truly alone in their entire lives. They go from their parents' house to a college dorm roommate to living with a partner. They're constantly accessible via phone, constantly checking in, constantly maintaining relationships. The idea of spending significant time alone, choosing it, not just enduring it when it's forced upon them feels threatening. It brings up existential questions. Who am I when no one is watching? What do I actually enjoy? What do I think when I'm not influenced by others' opinions? High-vibrational women have confronted these questions directly. Section 4.4. The Jungian Perspective on Solitude. Jung himself was famous for his relationship with solitude. He built a tower in Bollingen, Switzerland, where he would retreat for long periods to write, think, and explore his own unconscious through what he called active imagination. Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. High-vibrational women have learned to communicate with themselves first. They've developed what Jung called a relationship with the self, a deeper, archetypal center of the psyche that transcends ego. This doesn't make them antisocial or disconnected. Paradoxically, women who are comfortable in solitude form deeper, more authentic connections with others because they're not using relationships to fill a void or escape from themselves. They come to relationships as whole beings connecting with other whole beings, rather than as incomplete fragments, desperately seeking completion through another person. Reflection prompt. Pause the video for just a moment and ask yourself, when was the last time you spent meaningful time alone with yourself? Not watching TV, not scrolling social media, but actually being present with your own thoughts and feelings? How did it feel? Comment below with your answer. I'd love to know where you are in your relationship with solitude. Chapter 5. Fourth Rare SIGN Conscious Suffering. Section 5.1. The Most Misunderstood Concept. Now we arrive at the fourth and rarest sign of a high-vibrational woman, and this is the one that only about 2% of women ever develop, the capacity for conscious suffering. I need to be very careful here because this concept is easily misunderstood. This is not about seeking out pain or drama, martyrdom or victimhood, tolerating abuse or mistreatment, spiritual bypassing of legitimate problems. Conscious suffering is Jung's term for the intentional engagement with the psychological pain that comes from growth, transformation, and the integration of previously unconscious material. Section 5.2. What conscious suffering actually means. Let me paint you a clear picture. Unconscious suffering is reactive. Something happens to you, a breakup, a job loss, a betrayal, and you suffer without understanding or meaning. You're a victim of circumstances, and the pain is purely destructive. Conscious suffering is transformative. You recognize that certain psychological pain is not optional if you want to grow. It's the pain of ending a comfortable but unfulfilling relationship because you know you deserve more. Leaving a secure job to pursue your authentic purpose, even through financial uncertainty. Setting boundaries with loved ones who won't respect you, even when it means temporary rejection. Facing uncomfortable truths about yourself that shatter your self-image. Grieving losses fully rather than bypassing them with premature positivity. Example scenario. Imagine a woman discovers her partner has been emotionally unavailable for years. She has two choices. Unconscious suffering. Stay in the relationship. Complain to friends. Develop resentment. Maybe have an affair, slowly deteriorate emotionally, and eventually divorce bitterly after wasting years. Conscious suffering. Recognize that this relationship is not serving her highest growth. Have the difficult conversations. If nothing changes, make the conscious choice to leave, fully feeling the grief, fear, and uncertainty that comes with that choice, while knowing she's honoring her deepest truth. The second path involves more acute pain in the short term, but it's purposeful pain that leads to transformation. Section 5.3. Jung's Alchemical Metaphor. Jung used alchemical metaphors extensively to describe psychological transformation. The alchemists believed that to create gold, the philosopher's stone-based metals had to be subjected to fire, pressure, and dissolution. Jung saw this as a perfect metaphor for psychological development. The base metals are our unconscious, unintegrated aspects, our shadow, our traumas, our unlived life. The fire is the conscious, suffering we undergo as we face and integrate these aspects. And the gold is the integrated, individuated self that emerges from this process. High-vibrational women have learned not to avoid this fire, but to enter it consciously. They understand that certain pain is initiatory. It marks a threshold between who you were and who you're becoming. Section 5.4. How to recognize this capacity. You can recognize a woman who has developed this capacity by observing how she moves through difficult experiences. Sign 1. She doesn't rush the process. She doesn't try to get over things quickly or pretend she's fine when she's not. She honors the timeline of genuine transformation. Sign 2. She doesn't make others responsible for her healing. While she may seek support, she knows that the work is ultimately hers to do. She doesn't expect others to fix her or make her pain go away. Sign 3. She finds meaning in her struggles. She doesn't see herself as a victim of random suffering. She asks, what is this experience teaching me? How is this growing me? Who am I becoming through this? Sign 4. She has emerged transformed. If you look at her history, you can see that her most difficult experiences became her greatest teachers. She's not the same person who entered those trials. She's been forged into something stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. This is incredibly rare because our culture is obsessed with avoiding pain. We medicate it, distract from it, numb it, and bypass it. We're told that if we're suffering, something is wrong and needs to be fixed immediately. But high-vibrational women know that not all pain is pathology. Some pain is growth itself. Section 6.1. Bringing it all together. So there you have it, the 4 rare signs found only in high-vibrational women according to Carl Jung's psychology. 1. Comfortable with paradox, embracing the full spectrum of their humanity without needing to be consistent or one-dimensional. 2. Integrated shadow-facing and integrating the dark, repressed aspects of their psyche rather than projecting them onto others. 3. Sacred relationship with solitude, developing a rich inner world, and the Maida, capacity to be genuinely nourished by time alone. 4. Conscious suffering, the willingness to engage with transformative pain as a pathway to individuation and wholeness. These aren't traits you either have or don't have. They're capacities that can be developed through conscious practice, psychological work, and the courage to live authentically rather than comfortably. Section 6.2. Your next steps. If this video resonated with you, here's what I want you to do. First, subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. We explore deep psychological concepts like this every week. And the next video will dive into Jung's concept of the anima and animus, how to balance your masculine and feminine energies for optimal psychological health. Second, I've created a free downloadable guide called The High-Vibrational Woman's Daily Practice that gives you specific exercises for developing each of these 4 capacities. You can find the link in the description below. Third, and most importantly, pick one of these 4 areas to focus on this week. Maybe you need to examine your relationship with paradox. Maybe you need to begin some shadow work. Maybe you need to schedule solitude. Or maybe you need to consciously engage with a difficult emotion you've been avoiding. Don't try to do everything at once. Individuation is a lifelong journey, not a weekend workshop. Final thought. Carl Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. High-vibrational women have claimed that privilege. They've stopped performing for others and started living from their Authentic essence. You can do this too. Not because you need to become something you're not, but because you're ready to remember and embody everything you already are. Thank you for taking this journey with me today. Drop a comment below with which of these 4 signs resonated with you most, and let's continue this conversation. Until next time, keep doing the inner work. It's the most important work you'll ever do.